The crystal towers of Zephyria gleamed under the twin suns, casting rainbow reflections across the pristine white streets where no dust had ever settled. In this perfect world, the Zephyrian people had lived for thousands of years, their society built on harmony, telepathic communication, and an almost magical understanding of each other's thoughts and feelings. Lyra adjusted her flowing silver robes as she walked through the Academy of Cosmic Studies, her lavender skin shimmering in the afternoon light. Her large, opal-colored eyes held wisdom far beyond her 23 Earth years, though she had never heard of such a place called Earth. Like all Zephyrian females, she stood nearly 7 feet tall, her movements graceful and deliberate. Her people had evolved beyond the need for verbal communication, sharing thoughts and emotions through gentle touches and telepathic bonds. The males of her species had vanished mysteriously 3 centuries ago during what historians called the Great Silence. No one knew where they went or why they left, but Zephyrian society had adapted, creating new life through advanced biological technology that required no male contribution. The concept of masculine energy, protection instincts, and physical strength had become nothing more than ancient stories passed down through their crystalline databanks. "Lyra, you must see this immediately," her research partner Arya called out, her mental voice tinkling like silver bells in Lyra's mind. Arya's excitement was palpable, her emotions broadcasting so strongly that other students in the laboratory turned to look. Her emerald hair cascaded down her back like liquid starlight, and her golden skin seemed to glow with anticipation. The 2 young scientists hurried to the Deep Space Monitoring Station, where massive holographic displays showed the vast emptiness between star systems. Lyra's mentor, Dr. Celeste, stood before the main screen, her ancient face creased with concern and wonder. At over 500 years old, Celeste was one of the few Zephyrians who remembered stories of the lost males from her grandmother's time. "We detected something extraordinary." Celeste's mental voice was steady but filled with underlying excitement. "A vessel approaching our solar system. But that's not the shocking part." She gestured to the screen, where a sleek metal ship grew larger as their sensors focused on it. "Our bioscanners indicate there are life forms aboard that match the genetic signatures in our historical archives." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. "Males? Actual males?" "Not just any males," Arya whispered aloud, her telepathic abilities overwhelmed by shock. "The readings suggest they're from a species we've never encountered. They're similar to our lost males, but different. Stronger. More intense." The ship's design was unlike anything in their peaceful civilization. Where Zephyrian vessels were smooth and organic, flowing like water through space, this craft was angular and purposeful. It spoke of a people who knew conflict, who had fought for their survival among the stars. Dark metal plates covered its hull, and strange markings decorated its surface. "They're attempting communication," announced Zara, the station's communications expert. Her violet eyes widened as strange sounds filled the air. "But they're not using telepathy. They're making noises, vibrations through the air." The assembled Zephyrians listened in amazement as the alien voices crackled through their speakers. Deep, rumbling sounds unlike anything they had ever heard. Their own males had communicated telepathically, their mental voices soft and gentle. These new sounds were powerful, commanding, filled with strength and authority that made the young females unconsciously step back. "This is Captain Marcus Rodriguez of the Earthship Endeavor," the voice continued in what the Zephyrians didn't know was English. "We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars." Dr. Celeste worked frantically with her translation equipment, fed by their vast database of ancient languages and mathematical principles. Within hours, they had established basic communication protocols. The aliens called themselves humans, from a planet called Earth, and they were indeed all male crew members on an exploration mission. "Prepare the Grand Assembly Hall," Celeste commanded. "We must receive these visitors properly. But be warned, my students, our historical record suggests that males, especially alien males, may possess qualities we can barely comprehend. They may be unpredictable, aggressive, or overwhelming to our senses." Lyra's curiosity burned brighter than her caution. She had spent years studying the ancient texts about their lost males, wondering what masculine energy truly meant. Her research focused on the biological and psychological differences between males and females across the galaxy, but it had all been theoretical until now. The next morning, the human ship descended through Zephiria's atmosphere like a falling star. The entire population gathered in the crystal plains outside their main city, millions of tall, graceful females looking up in wonder and apprehension. Their society had known only gentleness, cooperation, and telepathic harmony for centuries. The approaching vessel represented something completely foreign to their experience. As the ship's landing bay opened with a hiss of escaping atmosphere, Lyra found herself in the front row of the reception committee, her heart beating faster than she ever remembered. Steam poured from the ship's interior, creating an almost mystical atmosphere as shadowy figures appeared in the mist. The first human to emerge was Captain Rodriguez himself. At 6 feet 2 inches tall, he was actually shorter than most Zephirian females, but his presence filled the space around him in a way that made him seem enormous. His dark hair was cropped short in a military style, and his brown eyes surveyed the gathered crowd with intelligence and caution. His shoulders were broad beneath his blue uniform, and when he moved, it was with purpose and confidence that commanded attention. But it was his voice that truly stunned the Zephirian females when he spoke through their translators. "People of Zephyria, we greet you in friendship." The sound was deep and resonant, carrying undertones of strength and protection that they had never experienced. Several of the younger females actually stepped backward, overwhelmed by the unfamiliar sensation of hearing such powerful vocal projection. Behind him came the rest of his crew. Lieutenant James Chen, a brilliant engineer whose quick smile and gentle manner contrasted sharply with the captain's commanding presence. Dr. Samuel Hassan, the ship's physician and anthropologist, whose careful, measured movements spoke of both scientific precision and hidden strength. Sergeant Michael Torres, the security chief, whose alert eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, ready to protect his crew from any threat. Each human male was unique in ways the Zephirian females had never imagined. Where their society prized uniformity and telepathic harmony, these beings expressed themselves through vocal tone, facial expressions, and body language that seemed almost primitive yet strangely compelling. Lyra watched in fascination as Captain Rodriguez extended his hand toward Dr. Celeste in a gesture their databases identified as a greeting ritual. When Celeste hesitantly reached out and their skin touched, Lyra saw her mentor's eyes widen in shock. There was no telepathic connection, no sharing of thoughts or emotions. Instead, there was something else entirely, a firm pressure, a warmth, a sense of solid reality that was completely alien to their experience. "Your touch," Celeste whispered aloud, forgetting to use her normal mental communication. "It's so definitive, so present." Captain Rodriguez smiled, and the expression transformed his face in a way that made several Zephirian females gasp audibly. Where their males had been described in historical texts as gentle and yielding, this smile held confidence, humor, and a hint of protective strength that stirred something deep in their genetic memory. "We're very real," he said, his voice carrying that strange quality that seemed to resonate in their chests. "And we're honored to meet your people." As the formal greeting ceremony continued, Lyra noticed how differently the humans moved compared to her people. Every gesture seemed purposeful, economical, as if they were always ready for action. Their eyes constantly moved, assessing, evaluating, protecting. When one of the younger Zephyrian females accidentally knocked over a ceremonial crystal, Sergeant Torres moved to catch it with reflexes so fast they seemed almost supernatural. The way he handed the crystal back to the embarrassed female, with a gentle smile and careful movements designed not to frighten her, revealed something the Zephyrian females had never seen before: strength deliberately held in check for their comfort and safety. Dr. Hassan, observing their reactions with scientific interest, leaned toward Captain Rodriguez. "Sir, I think our presence is having an unexpected effect on them. Their pupil dilation, increased respiration, and heightened skin luminescence suggest they're experiencing something similar to what humans might call attraction or fascination, but magnified beyond anything in their experience." The captain nodded thoughtfully, then addressed the assembled crowd again. "We understand that our appearance here is unusual and perhaps overwhelming. We want to learn about your remarkable civilization, and we hope you might be interested in learning about ours." Arya, standing beside Lyra, whispered in barely controlled amazement. "Did you hear how he said our? There's possessiveness there, protection, leadership. It's like he's responsible for his entire crew's welfare." Lyra nodded, unable to take her eyes off the humans as they were led toward the city. The way they walked together, constantly aware of each other's positions, ready to defend or assist at a moment's notice, spoke of bonds forged through hardship and trust that went far beyond the gentle telepathic connections of Zephyrian society. As they entered the Crystal City, the humans' reactions provided another shock to their hosts. Where Zephyrians moved through their environment with passive acceptance, the males actively engaged with everything they saw. Lieutenant Chen immediately began examining the crystal architecture, asking technical questions about construction methods and energy sources. Dr. Hassan observed their social interactions with keen interest, making notes on a small electronic device. But it was Captain Rodriguez's reaction that most impressed Lyra. He didn't just look at their beautiful city, he evaluated it strategically, noting defensive positions, escape routes, and tactical advantages with the eye of someone who had learned to protect others through careful planning and constant vigilance. "Your city is magnificent," he told Dr. Celeste as they walked through the main plaza. "But tell me, how do you handle security? What happens if someone means harm to your people?" The question puzzled the Zephyrians. Violence was virtually unknown in their society. Aggression bred out of them through centuries of evolutionary pressure toward cooperation and telepathic harmony. "Harm?" Celeste's mental voice carried confusion. "Why would anyone wish to harm another? We share thoughts and feelings. To hurt another would be to hurt oneself." The captain's expression grew gentle but serious. "In our experience, not everyone shares such noble intentions. Sometimes beings act from fear, desperation, or simple malice. How would your people respond to such a threat?" The question hung in the air like a challenge to everything the Zephyrians believed about the universe. For the first time in centuries, they were forced to confront the possibility that their peaceful existence might not be the universal norm. As they reached the Grand Assembly Hall, with its soaring crystal spires and telepathic amplification chambers, Lyra realized that these human males represented more than just a first contact situation. They were walking contradictions, gentle enough to carefully handle their ceremonial objects, yet strong enough to protect entire crews through dangerous space voyages, intelligent enough to master interstellar travel, yet practical enough to worry about security and survival. Most shocking of all, they seemed to find the Zephyrian females as fascinating as the females found them, but for entirely different reasons. Where the Zephyrian females were overwhelmed by masculine strength and presence, The human males appeared genuinely impressed by their host's telepathic abilities, architectural achievements, and peaceful society. The cultural exchange was about to begin, and Lyra suspected that both species were about to learn things about themselves they had never imagined possible. The Grand Assembly Hall buzzed with telepathic energy as thousands of Zephyrian females gathered to witness the unprecedented cultural exchange. Crystalline seats arranged in perfect spirals rose toward the vaulted ceiling, each position designed to amplify telepathic communication throughout the massive space. The human males sat in a place of honor at the center, their solid presence creating ripples of fascination that spread through the assembled crowd like waves across still water. Lyra had managed to secure a position in the inner circle, close enough to observe every detail of the human's behavior. She watched Captain Rodriguez as he studied the hall's architecture, his eyes tracking the flow of energy through the crystal formations with an engineer's appreciation and a soldier's caution. Unlike her people, who simply accepted their environment as naturally perfect, he actively analyzed everything, looking for both beauty and potential danger. Dr. Hassan had set up several monitoring devices with permission from the Zephyrian authorities, recording everything from telepathic energy fluctuations to the emotional responses of the assembled females. His scientific approach contrasted sharply with the Zephyrians' intuitive understanding of their world, yet his careful methodology impressed many of the female scientists present. "The cultural exchange will begin with demonstrations of our respective abilities," announced Dr. Celeste, her mental voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "Perhaps our guests would like to show us something of their civilization." Captain Rodriguez stood, and the simple action commanded immediate attention from every Zephyrian present. His posture spoke of confidence earned through experience, authority backed by competence. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the acoustic properties of the Crystal Hall. "We'd be honored to share our knowledge with you," he said, then turned to his crew. "Lieutenant Chen, would you demonstrate some of our technology?" What happened next shocked the Zephyrian females more than they had expected. Chen began setting up a portable holographic projector, but instead of working alone as any Zephyrian would, the humans immediately fell into coordinated action. Torres positioned himself to watch for potential threats. Hassan continued his monitoring, and the captain supervised while remaining ready to assist wherever needed. "They worked together without telepathy," whispered Arya to Lyra, her mental voice tinged with amazement. "Look how they anticipate each other's needs, support each other's actions. It's like telepathy, but different." Chen activated the projector, filling the air above them with images of Earth. The assembled Zephyrians gasped as they saw vast oceans, snow-capped mountains, sprawling forests, and cities that stretched to the horizon. But what truly stunned them were the images of human society, millions of people of both sexes working together, creating, building, sometimes even fighting. "This is our world," Chen explained, his voice gentler than the captain's but carrying its own quiet strength. "We share it with our females, our mates, our children. We build together, explore together, and yes, sometimes we protect each other from those who would do harm." The images showed human males and females in partnerships the Zephyrians could barely comprehend. Men and women working side by side in laboratories, flying spacecraft together, raising children in family units that combined both masculine and feminine energy in ways that seemed almost magical to a species that had lost their males centuries ago. "Your females," Dr. Celeste said aloud, her telepathic abilities momentarily overwhelmed by wonder. "They're so different from us, smaller but active, engaged. They work alongside you as equals?" Dr. Hassan stepped forward, his manner professionally warm, but carrying an undercurrent of protection that the Zephyrian females were beginning to recognize as fundamentally male. Human females are indeed different from your people. But yes, they're our partners in every sense. They're scientists, explorers, leaders, warriors when necessary. We complement each other's strengths. The concept was revolutionary to the Zephyrians. Their society had developed along lines of complete harmony and cooperation, but also uniformity. Everyone thought similarly, acted similarly, wanted similar things. The idea of two different types of beings working together while maintaining their differences challenged everything they understood about social organization. Lyra raised her hand, her action causing a ripple of attention. "May I ask, what is it like to be male? How does it feel different from being female?" The question hung in the air, and Lyra noticed how the four humans exchanged glances. Another form of communication their species used constantly. Captain Rodriguez smiled, and again that expression had effects on the assembled females that they didn't fully understand. "That's difficult to explain to someone who hasn't experienced both," he said thoughtfully. "But I can tell you that being male, for humans, often means feeling responsible for protecting others. We're driven to provide, to solve problems, to stand between danger and those we care about." Sergeant Torres nodded, his scarred hands speaking of a life spent in defense of others. "It's not that females can't protect themselves. Many are far better fighters than I am. But something inside us compels us to try. It's not rational. It's just what we are." Lieutenant Chen added, "We're also driven to build, to create solutions, to push boundaries. Human males often take risks that others might not, sometimes foolishly, because we feel compelled to test limits and expand possibilities." The Zephyrian females listened with growing fascination. Their own lost males had been described in ancient texts as gentle and yielding, focused on harmony and emotional support. These human males were clearly something entirely different, protective rather than passive, active rather than accepting, driven to change their environment rather than simply exist within it. "Show us more," requested Arya, her scientific curiosity overcoming her initial shock. "Show us how males and females work together in your society." The holographic display shifted to show human teams in action. Scientists collaborating in laboratories where males and females contributed different perspectives to solve complex problems. Military units where men and women fought side by side, each bringing unique strengths to dangerous situations. Families where fathers and mothers raised children together, teaching them different but complementary lessons about life. But what truly amazed the Zephyrians were the images of human couples, male and female pairs who had chosen each other as life partners. The humans explained concepts like romantic love, sexual attraction, and long-term pair bonding that were completely foreign to a species that reproduced through advanced technology and lived in harmonious but emotionally distant communities. "You choose one person," Lyra said slowly, trying to understand, "and commit your entire life to their well-being?" "When we find the right person, yes," Captain Rodriguez replied, his voice carrying warmth that made several Zephyrians unconsciously lean forward. "Human males often define themselves through their relationships, as husbands, fathers, protectors of those they love. It gives our lives meaning and purpose." Dr. Celeste requested a demonstration of Zephyrian abilities in return. Arya stepped forward and placed her hands on a massive crystal formation at the center of the hall. Immediately, the entire structure began to resonate with her thoughts and emotions, filling the air with visible streams of telepathic energy that swirled like aurora through the space. The human males watched in genuine amazement as dozens of Zephyrian females joined the telepathic chorus, their minds linking together to create complex patterns of shared consciousness. Information flowed freely between them, scientific data, artistic inspiration, emotional support, all without spoken words. "Incredible," Dr. Hassan breathed, his monitoring equipment going wild as it tried to measure the telepathic energy fluctuations. You've achieved perfect communication, perfect empathy. Every individual connected to every other individual. But Captain Rodriguez, ever practical, asked the question that had been troubling him. What happens when there's disagreement, when someone wants something different from the group? The question created a ripple of confusion through the telepathic network. Disagreement was rare among the Zephyrians, bred out of them through centuries of evolution toward harmony. When it did occur, the dissenting individual typically modified their desires to match group consensus. We find harmony, Dr. Celeste explained. Individual desires are balanced against group needs until everyone can agree. But what if the individual is right and the group is wrong? Torres asked, his soldier's experience with command decisions evident in his tone. Sometimes one person sees danger or opportunity that others miss. The concept was disturbing to the Zephyrians. Their society had achieved peace through consensus, but at the cost of individual innovation and risk-taking. They had never faced external threats that might require rapid, decisive action by strong leaders. Lieutenant Chen demonstrated human problem-solving by presenting the Zephyrians with a technical challenge: how to modify their crystal technology to communicate across interstellar distances. Instead of forming a telepathic consensus, the humans immediately divided into specialized roles. Chen analyzed the technical requirements, Hassan studied the biological interfaces, Torres assessed security implications, and Captain Rodriguez coordinated their efforts while maintaining authority to make final decisions. The speed and efficiency of their collaboration amazed the Zephyrian females. Without telepathy, without perfect harmony, the humans accomplished in hours what might have taken Zephyrian committees days of consensus building to achieve. But the most shocking moment came when young Zara, the communications expert, accidentally triggered a crystal resonance cascade that threatened to overload the hall's telepathic amplification systems. The energy feedback could have injured thousands of the assembled females. What happened next, forever, changed how the Zephyrians viewed masculine energy. All 4 human males moved instantly toward the danger, placing themselves between the chaotic energy and the assembled females without thought for their own safety. Captain Rodriguez shouted orders while Torres and Chen worked to contain the cascade, their hands reaching into dangerous energy fields that could have killed them. Dr. Hassan, meanwhile, began organizing an evacuation of the most vulnerable females, his calm voice cutting through the panic with authority that commanded immediate obedience even from beings who had never experienced such leadership. The crisis lasted only minutes, but when it was over, the Zephyrian females stared at the human males with new understanding. These beings hadn't thought about protecting others. They had simply done it automatically, as naturally as breathing. "You could have been killed," Lyra said to Captain Rodriguez, her voice shaking as she realized how close they had all come to disaster. The captain shrugged, a gesture that somehow conveyed both humility and absolute certainty. Protecting others is what we do. It's who we are. That evening, the Zephyrian Council met in emergency session to discuss what they had learned. The revelation that masculine energy could mean protection, leadership, and decisive action rather than just harmony and support challenged their fundamental understanding of gender roles and social organization. Lyra found herself walking through the crystal gardens with Arya, both of them struggling to process what they had witnessed. The human males had returned to their ship for the night, but their presence seemed to linger in the air, a reminder that the universe contained mysteries they had never imagined. "They make me feel," Arya began, then stopped, unable to find words for emotions that had no precedent in their experience. "Safe," Lyra finished quietly. "They make me feel safe in a way I never knew I needed to feel." The realization was disturbing because it suggested that their peaceful society might be missing something essential, not just males, but the masculine qualities of protection, leadership, and the willingness to take risks for the benefit of others. As the twin suns set over Zephyria, casting the crystal city in shades of gold and purple, both females wondered what other revelations the next day might bring. The humans had promised to share more of their culture, but Lyra suspected that the real education was just beginning. Somewhere in the darkness, the human ship rested on the crystal plains, its crew undoubtedly discussing their own impressions of Zephyrian society. Lyra wondered what they truly thought of a species that had achieved perfect harmony at the cost of individual strength and decisive action. She was about to find out that the cultural exchange would reveal truths that neither species had been prepared to discover. 3 weeks had passed since the humans arrived, and Zephyria was transforming in ways no one had anticipated. The crystal city that had remained unchanged for centuries now buzzed with new energy as Zephyrian females began experimenting with concepts they had learned from their male visitors. Lyra stood in her laboratory, no longer the passive research facility it had been, but now an active workshop where she and her colleagues were developing revolutionary new technologies. Working alongside Lieutenant Chen, she had discovered that combining Zephyrian telepathic crystals with human engineering principles could create communication networks that spanned entire solar systems. But the technical achievements were nothing compared to the personal transformations occurring throughout their society. Zephyrian females were learning to speak aloud, finding their voices for the first time in their lives. They were experimenting with individual decision-making, taking initiative without consulting telepathic consensus. Most remarkably, they were developing protective instincts toward each other and toward the human males who had awakened these new aspects of their nature. "The crystalline matrix is stable," Chen reported, his voice now familiar and comforting to Lyra's ears. Over the weeks, she had grown accustomed to vocal communication, finding it strangely liberating to express thoughts without immediately sharing them telepathically with everyone around her. "Excellent," she replied aloud, the word feeling strong and definitive in her mouth. "Now we can establish permanent communication with your Earth." The achievement represented more than just technological progress. For the first time in Zephyrian history, they had created something through individual initiative and cross-gender collaboration. The ancient patterns of group consensus and telepathic harmony were giving way to new models of cooperation that preserved individual thought while still maintaining social bonds. Captain Rodriguez entered the laboratory, and Lyra noticed how her heightened awareness immediately focused on his presence. Over the weeks, she had come to understand what the humans called attraction, a complex mixture of intellectual admiration, emotional connection, and something deeper that seemed to resonate in her very DNA. "The Council has reached a decision," he announced, his expression serious. "They want to formally invite a permanent human embassy to Zephyria." The news should have filled Lyra with joy, but she saw concern in the captain's eyes that dimmed her excitement. "There's something else, isn't there?" "Earth Command has been monitoring our mission," he said carefully. "They're sending a full diplomatic vessel with a mixed crew of males and females. They'll arrive in 2 months. Lyra felt a strange twist in her stomach, an emotion she had learned to identify as jealousy. The thought of human females coming to Zephyria, potentially forming relationships with the males who had become so important to her people, created feelings of possessiveness she had never experienced. "Will you be leaving when they arrive?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The captain's expression softened, and he stepped closer, demonstrating the human practice of using physical proximity to convey emotional intimacy. "That depends partly on whether your people would want us to stay." The question hung between them, loaded with implications that went far beyond diplomatic relations. Lyra realized that Captain Rodriguez was asking about more than just his mission. He was asking about her. about the connection that had been growing between them despite the vast differences in their species. Before she could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the city. Not the gentle chimes that Zephyrians used for routine announcements, but harsh, urgent warnings that Chen had helped them install for emergencies. Torres's voice crackled over the new communication system they had developed. "Captain, we've got multiple ships approaching fast from the outer system. Configuration unknown, but they're not broadcasting friendly intentions." The humans immediately shifted into what Lyra had learned to recognize as combat mode. Their movements became economical and precise, their casual demeanor replaced by focused intensity. Captain Rodriguez was instantly at the communication panel, coordinating with his crew while simultaneously accessing Zephyrian defense information. "How many ships?" he demanded. "7 vessels, sir. They're heavily armed and heading straight for the planet." Dr. Celeste's mental voice filled the laboratory, carried by emergency telepathic amplifiers throughout the city. "All citizens report to shelter centers immediately. Unknown vessels approaching with apparent hostile intent." But even as she broadcast the warning, Lyra could sense her mentor's confusion. The Zephyrians had no real concept of hostility, no experience with aggressive action, no defensive strategies beyond their peaceful isolation. Captain Rodriguez turned to Lyra, his expression grim but determined. "How quickly can your people mobilize? Do you have any defensive capabilities?" The question revealed the terrible truth. Zephyria had no defenses because they had never needed them. Their society had evolved beyond aggression so completely that they had become vulnerable to any species that had not. "We have no weapons," Lyra admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "No military forces, no defensive strategies. We've lived in peace for so long that we've forgotten how to protect ourselves." Captain Rodriguez was already moving toward the door. "Then we'll have to protect you. Chen, get to the Endeavor and prepare for orbital defense. Torres, coordinate with the Zephyrian authorities on civilian evacuation. Hassan, set up a medical station and prepare for casualties." "Sir," Chen said urgently, "our ship isn't designed for combat against 7 vessels. We're a science vessel, not a warship." "Then we'll have to be creative," the captain replied grimly. "We didn't come this far to watch a peaceful civilization get destroyed on our watch." Lyra watched the humans spring into action with an efficiency that was both terrifying and inspiring. These males who had seemed so gentle during their cultural exchanges were revealing another aspect of masculinity, the warrior's instinct to stand against overwhelming odds to protect others. "I'm coming with you," she declared, surprising herself with the decisiveness in her voice. "Absolutely not," Captain Rodriguez replied immediately. "You have no combat training, no experience with violence. You'd be in danger." "This is my world," Lyra said firmly, channeling the new strength she had discovered through her interactions with the humans. "My people are in danger because we've forgotten how to be strong. I won't hide while others fight for our survival." The captain studied her face, seeing something there that hadn't existed weeks ago: determination, courage, the willingness to take risks for the sake of others. Finally, he nodded. "Stay close to me and do exactly what I say," he ordered. "And if I tell you to run, you run." They rushed to the Endeavor together, where the human crew was performing what Chen called impossible modifications to their peaceful science vessel. Using Zephyrian crystal technology, they were creating defensive systems that had never been designed or tested, improvising solutions with the desperate creativity that humans displayed when protecting those they cared about. On the ship's bridge, Lyra watched in amazement as the 4 human males coordinated their response to the approaching threat. Torres monitored the enemy ships, calling out tactical information. Chen rerouted power systems to weapons that shouldn't have existed on their vessel. Hassan prepared for the inevitable casualties. and Captain Rodriguez coordinated it all while simultaneously maintaining communication with Zephyrian authorities who were struggling to organize their first military response in centuries. Incoming vessels have powered weapons, Torres reported. Configuration suggests they're from the Vorthon Empire, pirates who prey on peaceful worlds. Lyra felt ice in her stomach as she realized what was happening. The Vorthons were exactly what Captain Rodriguez had worried about when he asked about security systems. Aggressive beings who would see Zephyrian pacifism as opportunity rather than virtue. "How did they find us?" she whispered. "Probably detected our communication signals," Dr. Hassan said grimly. "Or they've been watching your world for some time, waiting for the right moment to strike." The first Vorthon ships entered Zephyria's atmosphere like falling meteors, their dark hulls scarred from countless battles. Through the view screen, Lyra could see them, angular predatory vessels that seemed designed to inspire fear and project menace. "Launching attack now," Captain Rodriguez announced, his voice steady despite the impossible odds. "All hands, brace for impact." What followed was unlike anything Lyra could have imagined. The modified Endeavor dove into battle against 7 larger, better-armed vessels, relying on human ingenuity, Zephyrian crystal technology, and sheer desperate courage to even the odds. Chen's modifications proved brilliant. The Zephyrian crystals could amplify and focus their ship's energy output far beyond normal parameters, turning their science vessel into a formidable fighter. Torres coordinated defensive maneuvers with split-second timing, using the ship's superior maneuverability to avoid devastating attacks. But the real battle was being fought on the planet's surface, where Dr. Celeste and the Zephyrian Council were doing something unprecedented in their species' history, organizing resistance. "Lyra," Captain Rodriguez called out during a brief lull in the fighting, "I need you to coordinate with your people. Use your telepathic networks to organize evacuation and emergency response. Your people need to learn to act decisively, right now." Lyra reached out through the telepathic crystals, her mind touching thousands of others across the planet. But instead of the usual gentle harmony, she projected the urgency and determination she had learned from the humans. "We must be strong," she broadcast to every Zephyrian female on the planet. "These beings threaten our world because they believe we are weak. But we are not weak. We are strong in ways they cannot understand. We must protect our home." Something remarkable happened across Zephyria as her words spread through the telepathic network. For the first time in centuries, Zephyrian females began acting with individual initiative and collective purpose. They organized evacuation centers with military efficiency. They modified their crystal technology into defensive systems. Most importantly, they began to fight back. The tide of battle turned when the Zephyrians discovered that their telepathic abilities could be weaponized. Working together, they created psychic interference that disrupted the Vorthon ships' targeting systems. They used their crystal networks to overload enemy communications and navigation equipment. In space, Captain Rodriguez's tactical brilliance combined with Zephyrian technological superiority proved devastating to the pirate fleet. One by one, the Vorthon vessels were either destroyed or forced to retreat, their crews discovering that what they had assumed would be an easy conquest was instead a coordinated defense by 2 very different but complementary species. When the last enemy ship limped away into deep space, Zephyria fell silent, except for the gentle humming of crystal networks carrying news of victory across the planet. Lyra found herself in Captain Rodriguez's arms. When that had happened, she wasn't sure. But his embrace felt like the most natural thing in the universe. Around them, the bridge crew was celebrating their impossible victory. But she only had eyes for the human male who had taught her people the meaning of courage. "We did it," she whispered against his chest, marveling at how solid and warm he felt. "You did it," he corrected gently. Your people found their strength when they needed it most. We just helped you remember what you already had inside you. The weeks that followed brought changes that would have been unimaginable before the human arrival. Zephyrian society began restructuring itself to balance their natural harmony with the individual strength and decisive action they had discovered. They established defense forces, learned tactical thinking, and began exploring concepts of leadership and individual responsibility. But the most significant change was personal. As the promised Earth diplomatic vessel approached Zephyria, Lyra realized that her feelings for Captain Rodriguez had evolved into something the humans called love, a bond that transcended species differences and created the possibility of something entirely new. "The Earthship will have human females aboard," she said one evening as they walked through the crystal gardens together. "Yes," he replied simply. "Will you want to return to your own species, to find a human female to bond with?" Captain Rodriguez stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression serious but tender. "Lyra, I've learned something during our time here. Love isn't about finding someone exactly like yourself. It's about finding someone who complements you, who makes you stronger, who shares your values and dreams." He took her hands in his, the gesture now familiar and comforting. "You've shown me courage I never knew existed. You've taught me that strength can be gentle, that harmony and decisive action can coexist. I don't want a human female. I want you." The confession hung in the air between them, representing something unprecedented in galactic history, a love that transcended species, combining the best qualities of both humans and Zephyrians. "But we're so different," Lyra whispered. "How could it work?" "Because our differences make us stronger together than we could ever be apart," he replied, echoing the lesson both their species had learned through their unlikely partnership. Above them, stars wheeled in alien constellations, and somewhere among them, an Earth diplomatic vessel carried the future of interspecies cooperation. But in the crystal gardens of Zephyria, two beings from different worlds had found something more valuable than diplomatic success. They had found love that could bridge any gap, overcome any difference, and create possibilities that neither species had ever imagined. The real victory wasn't the defeat of the Vorthon pirates. It was the discovery that the universe was large enough for both harmony and strength, for both telepathic connection and individual courage, for both Zephyrian wisdom and human determination. As Captain Rodriguez kissed her under the light of twin moons, Lyra knew that their love story was just beginning. The galaxy had suddenly become a much more interesting place, filled with infinite possibilities for those brave enough to reach across the void between species and touch the stars together. The future stretched before them, uncertain but bright with promise. A future where human males and Zephyrian females could create something entirely new, something stronger and more beautiful than either species could achieve alone. And in the distance, crystal spires hummed with telepathic energy that now carried not just harmony, but hope.